Diary, waltzing into our studio, as he always does at this time on a Tuesday night, John Walters with Walters Week. Well, John, what have you got for us this week?
What do I have?
What do you have?
What do I have?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I don't have. I don't have no leading lady.
Pardon?
I don't have no orphanages. I don't have any Christmas tree. All I have is dancing. Apostrophe. It's got an apostrophe on it. It's not dancing, it's dancing. Apostrophe. I went to the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, and that's how it starts, with a bloke on a catwalk saying, "We don't have this in the show. We don't have that." And he says, "We got dancing." Like that, with an apostrophe after it, you see, because it's the big dancing show that Bob Fosse, you know Bob Fosse, the big choreographer who's done all these films and shows, Cabaret, Sweet Charity, a lot of the films we've seen for years, he did all that stuff for. And eventually he decided he'd just put on a show on Broadway which was just dancing. Of course, it went a storm. It's not gone such a storm over here. I thought I'd have a look because, see, I'm not a dancing man. So when he started off saying, "All we got in the show is dancing," I thought, "Oh, excuse me." But I thought, I can't go. He was looking right at me, you know. I was down the front. But, see, when I was at school, it was still the case that people said, "Well, you ought to do ballroom dancing, you know, Walters, because later in life it'll be an asset." Of course, it wasn't any sort of asset at all. I mean, where do you see ballroom dancing these days? It's those people on the telly. You know, I mean, on Come Dancing, and that sort of thing. They go whizzing around. And they're like freaks to me. I mean, I never did need to do that. They just look like freaks because they're not taking any notice of the music. The music goes sort of ba-ba-da, ba-da, ba-da, and they go step, glide, step, twirly, that sort of thing. And it really has got nothing to do with it. So I've never been interested in the formal dancing, see. Except once, when we were courting, before we got married, at some rag ball or whatever it was at college, my missus said, "Oh, come on the dance floor." And I thought, what? And all I can do is sway from the left foot to the right foot when you do that holdy dancing, you know. And so the band was playing, and I just went left, right, and it's really finished off. And if I ever do that at home, I said, "Come on, darling, left, right." She goes, "Wah!" You know, because there we were on the floor, everybody looking at us. Everybody could see we couldn't walk, hardly walk. She said, "Oh, well, look, leave it, let's go to the bar." Then she realised in the bar I was going, swaying about. Of course, at that time, she put it down to my keen sense of humour. She's found out since. But people often insist and try and get me up to dance even today. And it's not really affected most of them. You know, they say they'll never forget it, but quite a lot of them. I mean, OK, there's just a few of them who can still only sleep with the light on, you know, but the doctor says, you know, those things go away, forget it. You know, the years take their toll. And Peel is the same. I mean, guys like me and Peel, we were the guys who put the records on for the school dance, you know, because we didn't want to get involved in all that sort of thing. Peel actually went to lessons. Not many people know this. He went with his brother Frank, and both of them were really no good at dancing. In fact, his brother Frank attempted a foxtrot and actually knocked the girl unconscious. He leapt into it at the Madame Sonia's dancing school at their village. Leapt in, whoa! Hit her on the edge and knocked her straight down. And Peel could only dance in a straight line. He could waltz. He couldn't turn around. He told me this afternoon because I asked him. And he could waltz, but he could just do a straight line, so he'd have to go along hoping the music could stop, because he'd go, da-da-da-da, 1, 2, 3, 1, thinking if the music doesn't stop, we're going to hit the wall. And that's all they could do. And Peel also told me this afternoon that that was the main reason he really started his career, because his 21st birthday was coming up. And being a sort of middle-class, you know, rather upper-middle-classy family, they were going to have a marquee on the lawn and Peel the guest of honour at the dance. And he went to the States rather than stay for his 21st birthday party. So dancing has some youth in our culture. There's many youths in our culture. There's some youths in our culture as well. But anyway, back to the show. So dancing is... Well, what do I know about it? As I've said, I've just explained, I know now, but, I mean, clearly it's brilliant in the sense that it's very skillful. It's very much an American show, you know, the company is like, all American, you know, there's one Hispanic girl, there's one black guy who's not very black, like a Coca-Cola advert. You know what I mean? Like, they're all, "I like to teach the world to sing." Don't get too close to the middle. Get the black guy at the back. No, but they're not like that about it, because they have one number where there is the black guy is featured, where they're doing an all-American thing. And he comes on, and he's a very good mover and so on. And they let him do this, so the band starts to play Dixie, you know. It's the song of the Deep South.
That's right.
And so he says, "That's my song." Kind of thing. Then he goes into it. "I'm glad I'm not in the land of the cotton. You know, old times there are best forgotten." So he does that sort of thing. But then, you know, there's a guy bounces across the stage, you know, with the stars and stripes and so on. They do all this American, these set pieces, really bounces across. And you think, this is incredible, but it's a bit like a Saturday Evening Post. You know what I mean? You know, those sort of covers of those sort of things. See, what people didn't seem to realise is it's just a set of dance sequences. Very well done, very clever. You know, I mean, but people really, when they saw Chorus Line, there was a bit of a story. And what they wanted was one of those dance things that has hopes, fears, laughter, tears. You know, I mean, my dancing's brought tears to many people's eyes, in some trousers, even mine. But, I mean, by and large, they wanted a story with it. They didn't just want in England dancing, I'm afraid. And also, some critics felt that Bob Fosse stuff was a little bit old-fashioned, perhaps. You know, we'd seen it so much on film and so on. And I'm afraid the show is closing at the end of the month. But if you're a dance buff listening at home and you can afford the money, by all means go and see it. You'll see some very fine Broadway dancing, sure. But their excuse is that it's got to come off, and they blame things in the press like, the Harrods bombing hit things, and the pound is against the dollar and all that sort of thing, which is all codswallop. But on the other hand, it's a good show, and I say it's coming off. It's easy for me, you see. I get into these things free. I can enjoy it. I did enjoy it, but I couldn't really appreciate it as a dancing routine, but I like the spectacle. There's one girl came across, it was like watching those Russian gymnastics. She came across and she was bouncing across the stage. Her feet came up, both feet touched both hands in front of her, sort of boom, ching, and then she bounce and kick, bounce, feet, bounce, kick. And you thought, that's incredible. I could never do something like that, so I appreciate it on that level. But the only dancing I've ever seen that's really impressed me, I once was playing many years ago, over 20 years ago in a jazz club, and there was a couple down the front. Today they get an Arts Council grant. All they did was stand still and stare at each other and occasionally move as if they were mechanised very slowly to the side, kind of, just different angle, pointing to number 2, pointing to number 7. And that's all they did. And I went and asked them after, and they said, we made it up. It seemed a pretty good idea. So what I'd like to hear is my favourite dance, the one I'd probably be able to do best. This came out in 1977 by a group called The Table, who did nothing else of any interest, and this is Do the Standing Still. Do the Standing Still by The Table. Well, here we go. Looking over my week Friday, I was invited along. I was very happy to be invited along by Alexis Corner's family, one of the people who were asked to go along. I think you were, weren't you? Were you invited?
Yes, I was,
yeah,
yes.
But some of us were obviously able to go and some not. It was a good idea on their part. Rather than have a little church service where everybody's very sad, they had something more in Alexis's spirit, a family sort of wake. And at Dingwall's club, they got some wine in and sandwiches and so on, and took the club for lunchtime, and a lot of people went along. And it was not too sad, in a sense, because, it was a sort of said yes to life, as it were, as Alexis did. The speeches were probably quite sad, but I'd had to go by that time, I'm afraid. But you suddenly saw quite a lot of the people over that you've seen in music over the last 20 years almost, and realised how many of them Alexis had used or influenced at some time. I saw Ian Carr, the jazz trumpet player there, who I'd known for years and years. And I remember he used to play with Alexis on a TV show called Gadzooks or something like that years ago. Jazz Chandler from The Animals, Zoot Money, Chris Farlow, those sort of people. Alf from Yazoo was there, some of the sort of newer bluesier people. And Beryl Bryden, who used to be a jazz blues singer years ago, still is, but she played the washboard on Rock Island Line, Lonnie Donegan's Rock Island Line, which was the record that turned Peel onto the whole thing. It was most strange seeing all these people, but it was quite a good feeling. As I say, I could only stay on for now because I had a lunchtime BBC jazz club jazz gig, because we have this band at the BBC, and I know Alexis would have been certainly the first person to say, play the gig. Man, don't you know what Alex was like. So it was very nice to sort of see him off in that way. Speaking of my gig, because everybody does your gig, you're always saying things like, hi everybody, I'm at the Claude Crawley Leisure Centre. That sort of come off. On Wednesday, I did actually start a series of gigs with this BBC jazz group. And what we do, we're playing sort of amateur Dixieland, but it's free. I mean, I'm not plugging it for my own profit. So every Wednesday I am going to plug this. We're at a place called New Merlin's Cave. I'm reading it at dictation speed. Now, Marjorie Street in King's Cross. So there's a pub there. We're playing in the back room every Wednesday from about 8:30. So it's free. It's sort of the chaps from the BB and Christie, who writes for the Daily Express now and used to play with the old Humphrey Lyttelton band and then with George Melly and Mick Mulligan. You know, he's a well-known jazz figure. He's playing with us and he's pretty good. But I won't say it's the worst gig I've ever had, but eventually there were must have been about 18 people there. When it started, we had, I think, 7 people, and 4 of them were related to the pianist. You must have done, even somebody on your status must have done a few duff gigs like that.
Yes, that's right. I've had a few gigs where, a mere 2,000 have turned up to. No, I actually, more realistically, in your neck of the woods, I did a disco in Sutton, and all of 2 people turned up. That's my record.
Did they dance?
2 people. No, they didn't want to be noticed. They sat in the dark corner.
I did one like that once when I was playing with Alan Price in the 60s then. We once did a gig at the end of the season, didn't realise, and we said, that's all right, we'll do it for a percentage of the door. We did it at Galston-on-Sea, and couldn't see anybody. Again, it was the tribe that hides from man, you know. You got all these palms around, and we were playing away, you know, Mr. Pitiful, blah, 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 blah. There's nobody on the floor, nobody in sight. And you feel, eventually 12 people came because they bought tickets, and we got six tickets worth, you know. But I mean, eventually you're shouting out like, do you really like soul music? And they're sort of, what? I said, do you really like soul music? Well, they're in Dusty Springfield. Oh, forget it. You know, what can you do? This is the last appeal for Robert Wyatt's puppies. You know, we had 2 puppies to give away, and we only had 1 letter so far. But if you do fancy one of Robert Wyatt's puppies, please write to me. But what with Robert's puppies, my gig at the New Mellins Cave tomorrow, it says getting like a personal column, and I think, you know, the BBC doesn't expect that sort of thing, so that's got to stop. For sale, Mangle, good working order, recently repainted in British racing green, £6.50 or near offer. It's a funny old world, Time. This is a new spot we're doing.
Okay.
It's a funny old world. I went home then on Friday after I'd done Round Table. Howard Jones and Tom from the Thompsons were there, you know, but they didn't want to go for a drink afterwards. And I got the missus to record the match, you know, the Manchester United game. So I didn't want to go home too quick, but I got home there, eventually spooled it all back about midnight. And dawned on me as I was watching it, have you ever thought how, you know, Ray Wilkins, Butch Wilkins?
Looks like Peter Powell.
Looks like Peter Powell.
Isn't that funny?
And I was amazed by this, and I'm watching this thing, and I suddenly thought, it's amazing, we better draw this to Radio 1 listeners' attention, you know, because there it was. You watch next time you see Manchester United, really, Butch Wilkins, Peter Powell. I mean, obviously, Peter looks more...
Butch.
Peter in. Butch looks Butch. Television criticism. You know, we were saying last week how there's so many of these things now, the jewel in the pavilions, the thorn in the throne. Woo! What happened? You know, those kind of things. All these new series are on, and they're on. Oh, all week. Every time you go in the house, there's somebody watching something about India or something that's going on, the 15th episode or something, you know. And I think last week we agreed with the critics, read 1 or 2 of the critics out, and I thought this week, oh, no, I saw some of Thornbirds, and I thought, Thornbirds are go! Little joke there, do you like that? And yet you find housewives talking about them. You know, people are there talking about Richard Doodah and all this sort of thing, and I think Thornbirds is appalling. I thought, is there nothing there for... Like, you know, like kid, like you and I, we intellectuals. They started another series, C.P. Snow's Strangers and Brothers, that's going on. I noticed that Hugh Hebbert in The Guardian said, right from the beginning of Strangers and Brothers, you have the wonderfully encouraging sense of page after page of C.P. Snow's vast text, chapter after chapter, even the whole books, falling perfectly into their proper place. The dustbin. So we're all getting it now. But I think with the Thornbirds, you know, it's one of these that I'm afraid feminists would go mad, but you have to say, well, it's a woman's show. You know, it's one of those with drama and romance in it. Like, it starts off and he's not really her son. You know, we know that in the young days. And then the old girl fancies the priest, and so does the little girl. But the little girl grows up to marry someone else. You know, still, I mean, she's still fancying the priest. The priest now an archbishop. And then the archbishop has a mad fling with, well, produces a son by one of the women there, but he doesn't know about it. And then he becomes a cardinal. And not only does he not know it's his son, but the son, who doesn't know the priest is his father, the archbishop is his father, he wants to be a priest himself, so he keeps calling him father. This gets really... I mean, frankly, let's finish this week by listening to a record I used to find amusing 20 years ago. It's a Spike Jones record where he really took the mickey out of these soap operas, and this is called Loretta's Soaparetta. This is for the Thornbirds, love it.
Whee! From the Walters archives from somewhere in the 1950s, Spike Jones. And John will be back on Thursday with his regular weekly look at the pop press. All right, now back to our session. Flesh for Lulu. This is Dog, Dog, Dog. This is for Robert Wyatt.